I think the girls with their nails done now. Girls with their
All right, guys, I am here with one of my favorite. I've been watching you, girl, forever. Brooke Walker. Such a pleasure to have you here.
No, thank you
I,
so much for having me.
yeah, absolutely. And I actually have a picture here. I think the very first I met you,
Yeah.
I think it was in Omaha, right?
Yes. Mhm.
Yes. And I remember when you were there, I was like, let me just tell you something. Your picture
Gosh, that's so crazy to think about.
Your picture was my my
Yes.
wallpaper on my cell phone.
I love
But
it.
it was just amazing to be there and be, part of the whole, like, show that you were putting together. I know you've been
Yeah.
very involved with, the
Mhm.
federation since, gosh, I don't even know much about your story. I love your physique, so that's so excited to get here with you because I wanna know more about you.
Yeah. You know what? Bodybuilding has, well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me. It's
Yeah.
funny that you say that the first time that we met was in Omaha. And yeah, that's wild for me to think about because I'm a fan of yours and I've always been such a fan of yours. So whenever we first kind of actually met in person, it was bizarre to me because I almost felt like we knew each other. As crazy as that sounds, and I guess just being in this industry, that's kinda how you start to feel about people, when you see them compete and you're cheering them on. When you actually
Mm,
do meet them in person, you feel like you already know each other,
no.
you know?
Yeah.
Which I love about the sport just because the camaraderie can be so just great, and especially within a a world that is so small in a sense, right? There's not a lot of muscular women out there, so the select few that we do have, I think we kind of have to band together, obviously. But yeah, I've
Absolutely.
I've been competing since 2012, and I started in women's bikini of all divisions, and
What?
bodybuilding. Yeah, I was a itty bitty bikini girl.
I gotta see pictures of you on stage. I'm
Yes.
gonna look it up on you, NPC Online News. I
I
will.
know, and it's so funny for me to think about, I've loved bodybuilding my entire life. I grew up reading Flex magazines. I loved Corey Everson. I was always a big fan of bodybuilding, and for some reason, I always had just like this infatuation with muscle. And so at a young age, whenever I was 12, I was introduced to the weight room and I began powerlifting at that point. And, the coaches, I grew up in a small town called Lago Vista, right outside of Austin, Texas. And I actually don't believe that the coaches that kind of introduced me to the weight room really knew what the impact that they were doing for me at that given moment. It was probably like a turning point in my life. And it's funny to say because I was a child, I was 12, but I had
Wow.
a coach that introduced me. He took me to the weight room at the high school and introduced me to three different lifts. And for my size, I was pretty strong, and he asked me if it would be something that I would be interested in doing, and I was like, "Yes," and I just
Yeah.
loved it. So, the gym's been a part of my life since I was 12 years old.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
I
amazing.
absolutely love it. It's been something that has just been a staple in my life, and it will continue to be a staple in my life until I pass one day, It's something I just enjoy doing, and
So you started competing in 2012 and in
Mhm.
bikini, and then
Yes.
did you just move through the categories?
Yeah, well, sort of. I'll say yes and no. I began competing in bikini and really to be honest, I really didn't know what I was doing, right? But I yeah, I just enjoyed it. I had no expectation. The first show that I had ever done was the Ronnie Coleman Classic in Mesquite, Texas in 2012, and I got 4th place there, and had such a great experience, to be honest. It wasn't even about the placement. I could have cared less how I placed. It was just an incredible moment of my life. I just had such a great time backstage. I had a great time at the event. I had a great time making memories after the show. And after that fact, I was like, I think this is definitely something I would be interested in doing long term. Um, and I continued with bikini, and actually, I started placing worse and worse after that. I wasn't
You're
getting
like, "My
top
body
five.
wants to grow."
Yeah, like I was not doing very well, if I'm being honest. And like I said, I just wasn't really sure what I was doing. It's funny how you can kind of you see yourself a little bit differently, right? I would
Mhm.
kind of compete, and naturally, I've always participated and played sports my entire life. So I'd say I have an athletic build. I have a very small
Yeah.
frame. I'm a very petite individual, but I have some muscle on my physique, obviously. And at that time, I still had some muscle on my physique, but I'm looking around at all these girls. And in 2012, women's physique was like just implemented, right? It was a very, very new division at that point. Um, so I'm looking at these women's physique girls at that point, and I'm thinking they're way bigger than me. And maybe that wasn't necessarily the case, but that's how I saw it, until
Yeah.
judges are like, listen, you're kind of screwing yourself. You got to switch divisions unless you just want to continue to get last place in bikini, which I was doing. I was getting like terrible placements, but
Oh my god.
I didn't know.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. But then okay, so then moving from bikini and straight to women's physique, did you
Yeah.
get your pro card in women's physique?
I did. I got my pro card in women's physique, and that's I in 2014, 2013. I don't know, 13 or 14. I Yeah, 14. Okay, let me think. So Jose Raymond
You
and I
started
were
you started pretty young because you're now over
Mhm.
40, are you?
No, I'm 36. Yeah. So I started
Yeah,
competing when I was 22. Yeah, so I've been doing it a
wow.
long time. Yeah,
You've
I
been doing it
have.
for a
And
while. Yeah,
yeah, and I enjoy it.
yeah.
Jose Raymond and I were on the same team with iForce Nutrition, and I believe in 2014, I believe I have that right. 13. In one of those 2 years. I'm not sure. But regardless, I was getting ready to compete at the Midwest Championships in St. Louis, and it was like a week before, and Jose had just won the Arnold Classic. He had an amazing physique, and we were doing some shooting with iForce after the fact at Powerhouse Gym. And he's looking at me like I'm an idiot, which I was. And he's, telling me essentially, you should not be doing bikini. Like, what are you thinking? And I'm like, well, Jose, I'm competing this next weekend. I'm a week out. So I'm just gonna go,
Shut
and
up.
regardless, yeah, I'm like, whatever happens, I'm just gonna go with it because I've already committed to this show.
Yeah,
I'm doing it. I'm this close. So, anyways, I at that point I go on to St. Louis and I compete and I get like eighth place.
yeah,
And I reach out to Jose after and I'm like, I think I need help,
yeah.
And so uh, Jose
No.
was, yeah, Jose was my first coach, and initially, I thought maybe I should start in figure, and I kinda started messing with the posing, and I was like, "You know what? I think I just wanna go women's physique." I like the idea of having a legitimate posing routine. I enjoy that performance aspect. I'm like, go big or go home. I'm in this for the long haul. I enjoy training. I don't want to cap my training off essentially and hinder myself because I legitimately enjoy training a particular way. So my body is going to naturally want to grow and develop, and why not just go to women's physique? That's a division that I'll be happier in. And from the moment that I stepped on stage, it was like, this is home. This is where I belong. You know.
Mhm. When did you get your pro card then?
I got my pro card at, the 2015 Junior Nationals. Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's right when wasn't when women's physique was then implemented at Olympia?
Yes, yes, and that was the first year, I believe, that women's physique was at the Olympia, and obviously Dana Lynn Bailey went
Dana.
in and won the first Women's Physique Olympia. And that was pretty iconic for me personally too, because at that time I was still working with Jose, and Jose and Dana were so close, you know. So Dana's, I think, always been an inspiration for so many people in this industry, and
Oh,
myself
yeah,
included. And I think she still
absolutely.
is. She embodies just what I think most women would still love to look like to this day, you know. So
Absolutely.
she's very iconic. Yeah.
Absolutely. Her, Juliana Malacarni, those
Hmm.
are, I would say to me, they kind of inspire me in different ways. Juliana Malacarni, I really love her physique.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I don't think that it would be rewarded now unless she really
Yeah.
progressed with, with what's going on in a division. But what I love about Dana is that she added the personality to it. She
Yes.
added the cool style and the cool
Mhm.
boyfriend that has the band and all the cool videos and teaching people how to exercise and just having that
Yes.
that really fresh, personality, which I actually want to ask your opinion about this. I think that's something that it's kind of missing right now, a little bit in the category again. A lot of respect for the two girls who are in the top, Sarah and Natalia.
Yeah.
But I think that is a little bit of a missing connection with the public from them. So we see Sarah when she steps on stage, we see her at Olympia, amazing performance, wins or not, and then she leaves, attends a few shows, but that's about it. And then I think with Natalia, the same. She won now 2 Olympias. She does a few seminars here and there, but I don't see much of her because I think in the era where we are right now, it was already back then, but especially now, we have this amazing technology where we can communicate, we can be
Mhm.
ambassador of the sport somehow, right? And I don't see much of that as of now. I think I
Yeah.
would love to see a little more because I don't know about you, but I become more of a fan when there is a little personality to it. That is a little bit of a back story, like seeing
Mhm.
where not Sarah came from,
Yeah.
where how they started, where they are going, how their training is going, because I want to see what the top is doing so I can find the inspiration, the motivation, and learn a few things
For
as,
sure.
to inspire me. So what do you think about that? What's going on right now?
Um, I completely agree with you for sure. I do think that I think really clear across the board from a female standpoint, there is a lot of lack of communication with the public, with the people that are in this industry. And I don't really know exactly why that is. But you look back and you look at people like Dana, who was extremely influential, and I think she actually is extremely influential at this point. Um,
Mhm.
and I can't tell you why, but there are certain things I'll tell you from myself personally. I think in terms of going to all of these big expos and events, in years past, these events were huge. You had like obviously the Arnold Sports Festival, the Olympia, you had all of these Europa super shows. Now,
Mhm.
from that standpoint, these shows, not that they don't obviously exist, they still do, but vendors that are there are less likely to pay a top level elite female pro. More so they would like to offer somebody that maybe is local to that area to come in for free, and I'll give you X amount of product for free in order for you to work these events. And it kind of sucks.
That
I can tell you personally from my standpoint, and this is the truth, and it's actually almost embarrassing to say out loud, but it is the truth. I was getting paid as an amateur athlete to travel to expos and get paid at these expos and get a per diem and get my flight and my travel, all of that comped. That was all paid for. And now it's like, I feel like I've done well as a pro, but
Oh, yeah.
those opportunities really don't necessarily exist anymore. And you can say things like, obviously, you have all these social media influencers and social media has skyrocketed. And I understand that, but it still kind of sucks whenever you have these top level female athletes that really they're not anywhere to be found, right? And I don't know if it's necessarily on their end, if it's maybe on the end of some of these companies, these supplement companies, the industry in itself, or if it's just probably a combination of the two, which probably is. But it's kind of a slippery slope, because I already think that female with muscle in the sport is on a decline in a sense that it's people see it as not being appealing and it's not marketable when I do believe that it can be a very marketable physique. I think that there's tons of female pros that are beautiful, they're feminine, they embody sex appeal, and I think they're marketable. Dana Lynn Bailey obviously proves that she's extremely marketable and she's branded herself. Look at her. She is still to this day, even though it's been years since she has competed, she is still what people would consider just an icon and a huge inspiration to women. She's still an inspiration of mine. So it can be done. I don't understand why it's not done. And I don't know if maybe females are afraid to even be as vocal, maybe on the internet too. Fear of backlash, because there's obviously tons of keyboard warriors. There's people that are very critical of how we look, how we sound, the things that we do, and it does suck. So I don't know, but I do believe that there's a lot of different factors that are going on.
Yeah, yeah. And it doesn't help now that the last couple months the highlight of our category was the beef between them,
Yes,
which I get it, it that is a level of I don't feel exactly that way right now, but when I
yeah,
am on prep, there is this animal that comes in in a
for
for
sure.
like a word of I'm on my game, is showtime, let's go. I get a little bit less talkative in the gym. Perhaps my face looks a little bit more,
Yeah,
like straight to business, and it translates into, like not being as I don't want to say nice, but I usually am a very bubbly person. So
for sure.
if you're comparing the two, you will see a huge difference. The person who doesn't know me will think she's just a quiet person.
Yes,
Uh, but with that said, um, between so I understand that sometimes that is a little bit of I'm gonna get you because I was
yes.
first, now I'm second, especially if I was especially if I was in that level where I'm fighting, back and
Hmm.
forth. Um, but it wouldn't be at a point where the highlight of my relationship with the second is all me talking down. Like I remember Phil and Kai Green, it was kind of fun to watch. It was even fun to watch
Yes,
because you never know if they're about to get down.
yes,
But with them, it seems like it's just a lot of talking down. It doesn't really make me excited because I just don't know what is going on. Do they
yeah.
really hate each other? Or but it seems like they do.
Yeah. Here's what I'll say on that. It First, it puts a bad taste in my mouth. It is an extreme turnoff to me to see those remarks because, like I was just telling you, um, women with muscle is like on a decline, right? We are like a rare endangered species, I'll say. So whenever we bring bad advertisement towards us, it looks bad and it puts a bad taste in so many people's mouths. And when you see, I believe women, we're supposed to have this softness about us, this femininity, right? So whenever we bring muscle to that and then we bring this harshness about it, whether it's being critical of one another or bashing one another, it just hardens us. And I just don't think it's a good look. We will be better if we stand united. And I think all that does is draw a line and it puts, okay, you do have a lot of competitors that are obviously from a female standpoint, they're saying, I stand with Sarah, I stand with Natalia, and it breaks my heart because it is unfortunate because I obviously am going to say that I admire and respect Sarah. She look at her. I mean, she's received a title that is something that we're all striving for. She has
Yes.
been the best in the world numerous times. So I will never, ever, ever take away from that. But it is disheartening to me whenever I see a champion bash another champion. Natalia is working just as hard. You know, at the end of the day, we don't know what it is that anybody is doing. And we have all, I can say, been in situations where maybe we felt like we should have placed higher. Whatever. Okay. That I understand that and I can respect that. But I do think that there's a proper way about going about things. And I don't think how Sarah handled herself is the way a champion should have held herself. And here's what I'll say, and this is going based off of my personal experience. I've watched Natalia win in Olympia, and she was a humble champion then. And I've watched Natalia lose in Olympia, and I watched her come off the stage. And in 23, whenever she lost her title and Sarah had regained her title at that point, Natalia was grateful still. She was humble and she was genuine. And I was a little bit upset with myself at that point because was at the third place, in 22, and then going into 23 Olympia, I got knocked off to fourth. So for me, that was, it hurt. It's nobody ever wants to kind of get knocked down. And so I'm sitting there and I'm kind of like, God, this sucks, after the fact. And who the one person that's sitting there and she's, like, encouraging me was Natalia, who I'm sure wasn't feeling great herself because she had just got knocked down? So it bothers me to see that when we're already kind of on this decline and I see somebody I've watched Natalia for years just continue to climb the ranks and, you know, I don't know what's going on with them personally, I couldn't tell you, I have no idea, but I'm just not ever gonna bash a champion. I'm gonna
Mm.
you know, if I believe that I
Yeah.
was the true victor, that's okay. I can believe that, but I'm not gonna knock somebody down. Natalia looks great. She is a phenomenal competitor. Sarah looks great. She's a phenomenal competitor. But at the end of the day, you have to take a step back and look at these things too. I do think that at that level, everybody looks phenomenal. And I think getting upset at something in terms of cheating in a sport that has no rules, I don't believe you can ever.
My husband says, yeah,
Yeah. How
yeah,
how do you draw a line? Your line
yeah,
might be different than other people's and whatever, but, lines and boundaries, they're blurred because they don't exist here. You know
they
what I
don't.
mean? It's like the wild, wild west, so I
That is
don't
so
agree with how she went about things by any means.
definitely, definitely. But
Mhm.
now I wanna talk more about you.
Yeah.
Um, Tell me a little bit more. So, because okay, your very first time that you won a pro show, what
Mhm.
year was that?
I was 21. That's crazy. Yeah. It took me a long time. Like,
Wait, was in
seriously
2021?
yeah, 2021. It was my
Okay.
first year to win a pro show. That was the first time I ever won a pro show was 21.
After how many years competing in women's physique?
So I turned pro in 2015. I competed in 16, 17, took 18 off, competed in 19, took 20 off, and then finally won in 21. Yeah.
Okay, 6 years,
I
the same as
yeah,
me.
yeah. I've always, for whatever reason, it's like, I don't know, it's tradition, really, I'll just say it's tradition. I always finish in, like, 2nd place. So, it's like, I'm just you get it. Yeah, you're, like, so close, but not quite yet there, but, at this point, I've just embraced it and it is what it is, but yeah, and I'm an athlete, I'm a competitor that there's a lot of girls that can continue to compete so many times throughout the season. I just am not that one. I'm not going to do it. If I don't feel good I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna push my body to a point of no return, and there have been times where I have pushed for a show and looking back at it, I kinda wish I wouldn't have. It did give me some sort of experience, going forward, and that's essentially not to do it again, and I obviously learned from it, so I'm grateful that I did obviously go on and compete in those shows, but now, no, I wouldn't do it.
What did you get in 2021 when you went to the Olympia?
I got 3rd. at that Olympia.
That's when you got third.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that's crazy. Feels like it was yesterday, but it was already 2021.
Yeah, it's wild.
So you got third twice.
Yes, I got 3rd twice, and then I got 4th in 23. Mhm.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
3rd, and 4th. Yeah, and, in 21, not that I didn't have some sort of expectation for myself going to the Olympia, I did, and I think as a competitor, we always
We
want to
all
have
do.
a goal whenever we go in there, and top 5 was my goal in 21, but if I'm just being honest, I wasn't even sure how I was gonna stand next to some of those girls, you know? Everybody looks a little bit different on social media, so with some of these competitors, the girls that I had never stepped on stage with before, I don't know how it's gonna look side by side, you know? It's one thing to look at somebody in comparison to photos, and then it's another to be alongside them physically, so I had goals and expectations of myself, but to be honest, I just wanted to go into the Olympia and, I didn't know if I was ever going to compete again. You know what I mean? It's just like that's
Yeah.
kind of something that I always, some sort of mentality that I always have. So I wanted to go in there and not put this stress on myself because I made it to the Olympia and I just wanted to enjoy that moment because I might not ever have that moment ever again. So I didn't want to put such a high expectation on myself that I stressed myself out and I forgot to enjoy the experience. But yeah, I did have the expectation because I wanted to do well and I felt like I was fully capable of doing well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it kind of happens the same with me. So when I won Omaha, in my mind, I was like, all right, it feels like if in my for me, um, I felt finally that I belong because I was going
Yes.
through these phases where I'm like, I don't think this is really for me because I've
Sure.
been third and second, but
Yeah.
it's just I was so ready to just receive the second place that when the announcer was calling the second place, I was like, "I'm ready."
I
I mean, and then when he called the other girl who we were battling, I was like, "Holy shit!"
yeah.
And Dom, my husband, was kind of telling me already after prejudging. He's like, "It's yours," but then he kind of like bit his tongue a little bit because he has said that
You
before
know?
in other shows, but because when I competed against again, love Anna. Anna was such a great champ too. When I competed against her in Chicago and
Yeah.
Atlanta, and she got first twice against me and got second. We were both on stage alone, so that we were judged alone for a couple minutes when Steve was judging us, and so I after that prejudging, I received tons of messages of people saying it's yours, it's yours, it's yours. And again, just like you mentioned a few minutes ago, there are times that we feel like it is. We looked at
Mhm.
pictures, we're like, happened.
Yeah.
I felt that way too. But then I talked to the judges and they said just a little bit more muscle, which has always
Mhm.
been my case. A couple
Yeah.
more, pounds in your inches in your back or quads or whatever. So, but anyway, so I didn't want to hear or see or I didn't even touch my phone after prejudging because I was like, it's not done until they call my name. Like I don't want to
Uh-huh.
know you think. I don't want to know what any of the IG channels think. I don't
Yep.
want to see it. I need it to be focused right now. So when they called my name, I was like, holy shit. So when I finally really understood that I was going to the Olympia, I was like, it just, I'm like, I'm really going. I can't believe it. I think I was so excited, Brooke, that I overdid things.
Mhm.
So, and I was hearing a lot of people and people that are very, high up here too in bodybuilding because I live in Las Vegas, so I'm
Yeah.
constantly around a lot of amazing people. My team too, Dom has been coaching
Yeah.
amazing athletes. So we know that some of the comments are coming from people who have the eyes and they see me
Mhm.
every day. So you're hearing, like you have an amazing structure, you have amazing this. I think
Yep.
you can get five. And so I'm like, fuck yeah, let's go. I'm ready. And then to go there, not even get top 10, I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, Brooke, I needed that.
I
I
understand.
needed I needed
Mhm.
that because I got so I kept hearing these things from from so many different corners, and I was overly excited. So I started doing more things because I was like, I'm going to the
Yeah.
Olympia. So if you don't have really that fire when you're going to the Olympia, I don't think this sport is really for you. If you're
Yeah.
feeling like you're not 100% because you're going to the biggest stage that it is in your sport. So
Yes.
so what I'm trying to say is that I was really, and I use that analogy a lot. I'm kind of that horse that is just racing, and if you don't pull back,
Mm.
I'll jump cliff.
Yeah,
So
I
I was
understand
thinking,
completely.
I'll go. So I was doing, Dom would give me 30 minutes of cardio in the morning. I would do 45,
Yeah.
or I would walk my dog afterwards, or I would go to the gym and do the extra reps, or I would cut a little bit of the carbs here and there because I was like, I don't feel like I'm really coming in.
Yeah.
And it was such an amateur, approach because I know better. The bodybuilding is not the kind of sport where you do more. For example, if you're a basketball player, you're a little bit more on the,
Yeah.
you're practicing a little bit more. You're a soccer player, you're in the field, you're practicing a little bit more. With bodybuilding, that is a like a fine line where if you do it too much, especially with the genetics that I have,
Yeah.
which I'm not by any means a muscular person. I fight
Yeah.
for every ounce of muscle that I have in my body because, again, I was a swimmer. I was always in sport. I never been fat. Never had any
Mhm.
type of fat cells in my body. Um, Hormonally, I'm not. My estradiol is very low, so usually it's a
Yeah.
common denominator between women who are very thin, as opposed
Mhm.
to women who are bubbly. Um, and so with that said, I was just overdoing. And Dom, there is so much that he's my husband and my coach, but there is so much that he
Yes.
can do,
For
when
sure.
he's the whole entire team, and then he thinks that I'm intelligent enough, and I know I am, but I was just going crazy, right? But
Yeah. I
I'm
understand.
intelligent know to follow a plan, stick to the
Mhm.
plan, and you're also, my assistant coach, so you know how I do things. But I don't know what happened, Brooke. I was just so excited.
Hey, I
And
totally understand. I get it. I
and
think
then
that's
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
and so I here's the thing, I think whenever you're at this level, the goal is always to get just a little bit better. You know what I mean? Whatever that takes, if you are a fraction better than what you were yesterday or the last time you stepped on stage or the week before, or whatever the case may be, you are doing anything and everything in your power to get just that much better, you know? And sometimes it's as simple as if it's not broke, don't fix it. And as simple as it is so hard for most of us to grasp, you know, and I put myself under that same umbrella because I'm the same way. And I think that's why it is so good to have somebody looking over you at all times. And here's what you just like you're saying, you're like, okay, I'm supposed to do 30, but I'm doing 15 more minutes, you know? And I'm guilty of those things too. I totally get it. And the downfall on that is at some point it's like, even though you were thinking that you were doing yourself some good, at some point it comes back and it gets you, you know, and you'll be kicking yourself in the butt. Like, damn, why didn't I just do what I was supposed to do? It's that
I know.
easy. But
Then it's easy.
you
And
know,
another
it's
thing,
hard.
yeah, it is. Yeah. And I think that's why we are so rare in a sense, right? Because you have
Hmm.
now, a pandemic of people who don't really exercise or overeat or
Hmm.
whatever the case may be. I think there is a shift. I can see that is a shift is slowly happening, but at the same time, I feel like I see the shift because I follow the pages, I fitness pages, I followed it. So I'm constantly
Yes.
looking at what my niche is. But when I get out, when I travel, when I go to airports, when I go to different countries, I'm like, okay, so it's still. I wish it was better, but it's still not.
Yeah.
Like not there yet. But with that said, so you're talking now with a completely demographic of people who are asked to do less.
Hmm.
Because
Exactly.
prioritize recovery, like
Mhm.
understand that's not how the human body works, which is completely the
Exactly.
opposite of what we do as coaches, coaching
Yeah.
lifestyle, right? And
Yeah.
another thing too that I realized, and I don't know about you, that was the first time. Two things that was the first time for me. It was the first time that I competed for pretty much the entire year. So I've never done that
Mhm.
before, where I competed at the beginning of the year, and then I had to sustain that until the end. And then it was also the first time that I didn't do my peak week away from home. That was the
Yeah.
first time that I picked myself in my house.
Yeah.
It's not the same.
Yeah, that's a kind of an interesting concept to think because most
Ugh.
people will never have that luxury to do, but I don't know if it would be a luxury if it would help you or throw you off because you're so used to being elsewhere whenever you are doing your peak. So, it's funny. I don't really have never really thought about that until right now. So that's interesting.
So Christina Mendoza lives
Mhm.
here.
Yes.
She doesn't do it. She does it in a hotel. She did one time. She went to the Olympic one time only, and she said that she did it at home. She would never do it again.
Wow.
Chelsea Dion lives
Mhm.
here. She'll never do it at home again. The thing is that, so when it comes to peak week, for people who are listening, they don't understand what that means. Is that really It's really important to prioritize your rest, to really
Mhm.
allow the food. I mean, I especially for my body and for them. I mean, I guess for us female bodybuilders in general, that is that finesse of like really, making sure that your muscles are getting fuller. You're drying it out, but you're not spinning around through food, because then there is no.
Mhm.
So what is goes off filling up, right? Because you need to really
Yeah.
conserve, the carbs you're using. So every time that I went to any other shows and I picked myself in a hotel, so I am confined in that little space where I'm eating, watching TV, put my feet up, and I do a few rounds of posing with my posing coach, which is
Yeah.
Christina. And then I'm back again in my bed and I'm watching TV. So
Mhm.
right here, I was doing the same thing as I
Yeah.
always do every day. Wake
Mhm.
up, go down. I have it's 2 stories, so I would go downstairs, do my stuff, and then I would be, because you're not sleeping during peak week, because 'cause you're, like, going
No.
crazy, right? You're like, "Oh my god, it's almost showtime." Um, and then so I'm still fixing my house, cleaning my house, doing things, doing that. Dom had all of his competitors coming to our house so he could watch them, could see them, because he had 7 people competing.
Yeah.
So I was also helping him, helping Levy. This
Yeah.
is going to sound this is gonna sound crazy. I was tanning Levina at 1 o'clock in the morning.
It does sound crazy.
I was tanning Levina at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I stepped on stage at 9 o'clock, Brooke.
Yeah, that's insane, isn't it? And you know what?
What the
You learn from
fuck?
that
What
mistake,
the fuck
obviously.
was I thinking? What was I thinking?
You probably weren't thinking, in all honesty.
And
And
then
and
it's obvious that Dom,
y
it's like from everybody in our team. Amanda is the one that she got this.
she can do it,
Like,
she
come
can
on,
handle it.
she can do it.
Yeah,
And he wasn't babysitting me from. I mean, not that
yeah,
he babysitted anybody, but he
for
was like, okay,
sure.
yeah, you know what I mean. So I don't blame him either for
No,
kind of telling me,
absolutely.
but I just don't know. Like, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, "Oh my gosh, how amateur of me." But again, it
No,
was my first
it was,
But then
but
you made
here's
me
the
think
thing.
that because you got 3rd in your first Olympia. I was like, "This bitch."
No, I think it's just a matter of saying too, like what is routine for you? It would throw me off. Obviously, being in the own comfort of my home for peak week would be nice in a sense because it's the comfort of your home. But it would throw me off because during peak week, I'm so used to being in a hotel, like you are saying, and essentially doing exactly what you just said. resting, staying off my feet, watching TV, eating, going through posing, and then just continuing that cycle over and over again. You're just in your own element. And I think obviously at that level too for the Olympia, you have to be in your own element and just keep things as routine and as structured as they have always been for you in years past is what is going to set yourself up for success. But with that being said, in order at in order for us to get better, I almost feel like a lot of times it requires us to make a long list of mistakes prior to that, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So you learn
Absolutely.
from it. We've all done those mistakes and you refer to them as amateur, and they are whenever you take a step back and you look at it, you're like, why would I even do that? I know better. You know what I mean? And yes, you do know better. If somebody were to come to you and say these things that they're doing, you're like, well, you don't need to be doing any of that. You need to be sitting your butt in your hotel room, not getting up, eating, and worrying about yourself. Don't worry about anybody else. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
then you catch yourself doing it, you know? But we're
Yeah.
human and that's all it equates to and just learning from it, you know?
Absolutely. But I want to ask you a question. Feel free
Yeah.
to answer me or not. But I was so excited to see you in Olympia. I was so
Yes.
excited to just see. I think from everybody that from everybody that I was thinking to be like backstage, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be near her. Um, I think I really vibed with your energy when I first met you, and that's what I was
Yes.
like looking for. Because I think when backstage, and again, I would not be taking away your attention or and any of that,
For
to
sure.
be looking around because I
Mhm.
know it's game time. But
Yes.
uh, I think that I was looking forward to just that experience. And I'm not gonna lie, I
Yes.
was actually forward to see Rachel too. I don't know
Yeah.
Rachel. I've never met
Yeah.
I met her maybe
Yeah.
once in Tampa. Um, I don't know much about her,
Mhm.
but I do like her physique.
For sure.
Certain that I do like. I think she would be a killer woman's bodybuilder too.
Absolutely.
It holy crap,
She
she
wanted
would
it.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I just think that that category kind of lacks a little bit of that is one particular person, Angie. She reminds
Mhm.
me a little bit of the posing that she does too. But I think it would be
1000%.
yeah. But I think it would be really cool. But anyway, so going back
Mhm.
to my question is how what made you decide not to compete?
You know, there gosh, there's a long list of reasons really, and it was very, very bizarre for me, in fact, because in last year, going into Tupelo, whenever I kinda started tossing the idea around of getting back on stage, first and foremost, I really wasn't even sure if I was gonna do anything, you know? And I wasn't sure if I even wanted to do anything either. So, kind of prepping and seeing my body kind of change, I was staying pretty low key, not necessarily because I was like hiding anything from anybody else, but for the simple fact that I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. So, when people were asking me, are you getting ready for a show? I'm like, yeah, I think so. But I don't really know what, you know, because I wasn't sure,
Mhm.
and I didn't know if I had that passion in me anymore. I was pretty bothered by my not necessarily my placement in 23, but just my prep. I knew what I was capable of and I had made mistakes and I was just stressed and there was just a lot of factors going on that by the end of it, I was just ready to get it over with, and that made me somewhat ashamed in a sense because so many competitors are looking to step on the best stage in the world, the Olympia, and I have this opportunity to do that. And I'm sitting there like, I just want to get this over. I don't even want to, it's embarrassing because so many people would love to just have the opportunity to step across that stage. And I was ready to just get off of it, you know? And it wasn't even
But
necessarily because of the,
if it makes you feel a little bit better, Brooke, I think from the majority of women that I
Mhm.
speak to, in the gym and here too in the
Yeah,
podcast, we do feel that way sometimes going to the
yeah,
Olympia. I mean, or even going to a show. Yeah, um, I
exactly.
I've I've ex- I've experienced Chelsea sharing that with me. I've experienced Levy telling me that too.
Mhm. Yeah.
I've experienced well, Christina Mendoza just changed from women's bodybuilding to wellness,
Yes.
was just chasing something that she couldn't really
Yeah.
reach. So don't feel bad about yourself,
Yeah.
feeling that way, because it's a lot in us. I mean, I don't,
It
it's
is.
a lot of things that changes, not just
Mhm.
physically, but hormonally, and you just can't help it.
Yeah. And that wasn't like me because I love competing. I love getting on stage and I enjoy every minute of it. I enjoy training in the gym. Obviously, I've done it for most of my life. So it was just a bizarre feeling for me to not want to do something. So going into the 2025 season, I was a little apprehensive because I wasn't quite sure how I would respond to things. Not from like a physical standpoint, just I don't know if I wanted to do it. That was just as simple as that. Well, I get closer and closer, and I'll be honest, whenever I kinda chose Tupelo, I probably should have done a show before Tupelo. I think I was definitely ready to, but Tupelo just made sense for me in terms of travel. It was just a few hours from me. I'm like, "I'll do that. It'll be easy, less stress, whatever." Um,
Yeah.
and the closer I started to get to Tupelo, I was really getting excited. And I at that point knew I was like, "Okay, I'm not done yet. I'm just excited and eager to step on stage." I obviously wanted to win, but I really just wanted to get back on stage and just do it. And that's what more than anything I was so excited about. So at that given moment, I knew I was not finished competing. And then I get to Tupelo and have just kind of like a Cinderella-like experience, I had 0 issues, there was 0 stress. I slept the night before I competed, which is something that I never do, I've never slept before, the night. Um, and it was just great. It was a phenomenal experience, and, I remember thinking as soon as I got off of stage at Tupelo and I had won, I'm thinking, I've got like 8 weeks to get better for the Olympia. And I was so excited. And so for about 2 weeks after that, kind of like you're saying, I'm sitting there doing everything in my power to get better. And really, there wasn't anything that needed to be done. I just needed to kind of continue and rest and recover and prioritize those things. And at that given moment, I'm like, how much more cardio do I need to do? How much less food do I need to eat? You know what I mean? And just then I think I started to stress myself out, started to not feel good, and I was kind of battling some sickness. And then I was not sleeping at all, driving myself crazy. There was times where, and this is a rookie mistake, a amateur mistake, but, I'd get up in the middle of the night because I can't sleep and I'd find myself eating like rice cakes and peanut butter, and then I would think, "Oh, I'll be fine. I'm gonna be fine. I'll get back on track tomorrow." And then it almost became a game, as crazy as this sounds, like I was sabotaging myself, you know what I mean? And like, "I'll be fine. I'll get on track tomorrow." And then I kinda do the same thing. It was crazy. It was just this cycle, and I continued on it, and at some point, I'm sitting there and I'm, like, thinking, I'm a coach, and if I were to take a step back and one of my athletes or my competitors or just a person that was coming to me and they're kinda telling me these things that they're doing in the middle of the night or just, taking pills to sleep and then taking stimulants to keep you up for the day, to function, I'm like, what would I tell them? And I took a step back, and that was kind of like an aha moment for me, and I said, "I'd tell them to pull out." And at that moment, I was like, "I'm pulling," and I knew it mentally, but I didn't wanna say it out loud, because that's not me, first of all. That is not me. I enjoy prep. I am somebody that can eat a whole lot of food or minimal food. I can do tons of cardio if it's required of me or little cardio, and I enjoy every minute of it. My mentality for the most part is always going to be very excited and eager, and I'm not going to make those individuals suffer around me because of a choice that I'm making. And that's how I've always been, so to kind of have this really major struggle, and at the end of the day, I'm always going to practice overall health and general wellness because there is going to be a life that I expect to live when bodybuilding is over. That is of utmost importance. So whenever I start to sacrifice that, I knew that that was like, I got to take a step back here and to be honest, didn't want to say it out loud for the longest time. And when I finally did tell my husband out loud and I started crying and bawling in our breezeway, and he's like, "Are you sure this is something that you want to do, or are you just having a moment?" I was like, "I have to do it. My health is of utmost importance right now." And he agreed. And, we're like, This isn't me retiring at all. We're like, we'll just sit this one out and we will focus on getting better next year and come in where we need to be, you know?
But Brooke is just so, and that's one of the things why I wanted to have these conversations with you guys as top competitors, because I think it's so there is so much power in making you guys more human as opposed to something that is just so foreigner and harder to achieve. So when I look at, for example, remembering myself when I first started in the gym and looking at pictures of you in my on my phone, and I'll
Yeah.
have talking to you, if you spoke to me 10 years ago and said that I would be having these conversations and you acknowledging and respecting me as the same as an athlete, I would be thinking that's crazy. When is that going to happen?
Yeah.
Now, with if any new competitors looking at us, or anybody, even from like people, when I go back to my small town in Brazil, or friends of mine from here who are not in bodybuilding or fitness in general, or my family, they all think that we are these robots that are able of doing amazing stuff. Yes, we do, in a sense, because we are, able to, the majority of time, 98, 99% or 95% of the time, we're able to stick and have that discipline and of doing those things day in and day out. But that we are these type of robots that will never, you know, cheat on the diet, or that will never have doubts, or that will never have days that we don't want to go to the gym. And that is just so far away from being reality. Because when I first started going to the gym, which it just happened to be Gold's Gym Venice, because I was going there for school.
Yeah.
I didn't know about the gym at the time, and now I know how iconic it was. So Breon was starting to
Mhm.
become, kind of the face of classic physique. And Breon one time was doing his stairmaster with me. I was right next to him, and I was just kind of curious and just talking to him. And he goes and he says, "I just had a entire jar of peanut butter yesterday, and I needed to be on the Stairmaster for an hour because the Olympia is coming in a week or two or something like that." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" What?
Yeah.
And I remember Hella Trevino telling me a few things too, in the
Yeah.
gym. And then I caught, Lavina doing a few things because she stayed with me for a couple weeks before the
Yes.
shows, and we just like on her hand.
Stop. Yes.
And I would do the same myself, that there
Mhm.
were times, and again, not this, we shouldn't be doing that. We know
For
better, but
sure.
there are times that we just can't take it. I would have times I would wake up in the middle of the night and I would just go and I would do loops around my kitchen 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And I would have
Yeah.
these conversations with me where I'm like, "So what do you want?
Mhm.
What do you want? Do you want this right now, or you want to
Yeah.
win? What do you want?" And I would have this
Exactly.
hard conversation with me to almost
Mhm.
make me feel bad at myself.
Yeah.
And there's some days I win, some days I won, and I was like, "Fuck yeah, like this is I'm
I
ready to
know.
win."
Yeah.
And there would be days, and I'm kind of embarrassed to say this, but there would be days that I would be going down 3 or 4 English muffins
I know. I get it.
with freaking butter on it, and it's out my
It's
throat.
like you're gorging yourself and you feel so guilty after. You never feel good about it after the fact, ever.
You feel terrible, you feel
You do.
terrible.
And
I
you're
did
right.
one I did
It
one
should
time
be.
with Alina Popa. Alina Popa used to coach me, and I did one time that I just couldn't take it anymore. I woke up in the middle of the night and I went to a 7-Eleven down on my street when I used to live in downtown LA. And it wouldn't help that everything is open in downtown LA. So if it's
Yeah.
2 o'clock in the morning, you're talking to yourself and you decided to just do something stupid, that is a store down the street. So I did something stupid that night, and it was probably the very first time that I really binge. And she looked at myself the next day. She's like, "Damn, you look great." And I'm
You're
like,
like,
and
"Well,
I'm
little
thinking
do you know what I
that
did."
demon, that little like demon in my head was like, oh, whoa, oh, really?
Right?
Maybe I could get away with this more often. And but
Exactly.
anyway, so I ended up telling her, and of course she didn't like to hear that because she said now we have to completely change the plan. Like
Mhm.
we have, that was so. I guess what I'm trying to tell anybody who is listening here is that, of course, we don't encourage anybody to do that if you really want, to have a successful season because you will be faced. There will be times that your body will respond okay, and then you're probably going to look good the next day because then your
Yes.
glycogens are your muscles are back and popping again, but you're not gonna feel good here. And that is something that you can take back when you step on stage and you know that you didn't do everything you're supposed to.
Mhm.
That's
You're
what it kills
absolutely
me the
right.
most.
Mhm. And I think that's, to be honest, that's a huge reason why I did obviously pull from the Olympiad, because it doesn't matter. I could have 1000% probably pushed a little bit further and been okay, and still brought a good look. But I think at the end of the day, I know me. Um, I know what I'm capable of, and I would have been upset with myself. I am a good competitor, and I do have discipline. And sometimes what we're doing behind closed doors when nobody else sees us is that's when it's the most important. So, regardless if you're telling people if you're kind of adventures to 7-Eleven at 2 a.m., you at the end of the day know that you were doing them, and it sucks. And I think as a competitor, if you make it to that far, especially, I think everybody, each and every one of us is probably pretty similar in that regard, where we're going to be our biggest fan, but our toughest critic as well. So whenever we make mistakes, no matter how detrimental or how minimal that mistake may be, it still will be always there, lurking and mocking us. you know? So I think it's really important that whenever you do make those mistakes, yes, you are human, but I think it is important to tell people about them because it will help you in the long run. And I think that's been my mistake sometimes too, is making those mistakes and being like, oh God, I'm not telling anybody, and it just, I harbor on it, harbor on it, harbor on it until I just blow a fuse. I'm like, oh, well, this is what I've done. And it's terrible. And yeah. And now I look awful. When in reality, that's not necessarily the case. You just have to kind of get right back on board and put one foot in front of the other and say, hey, you know what? I made a mistake. Everybody's going to make a mistake. It's rare that any one person has probably gone through a contest prep and everything has been 100%.
Yeah,
There's
yeah, it's
going to be
impossible.
hiccups. Yeah, there's going to
Yeah.
be hiccups, So cut yourself some grace, hold yourself accountable, yes, but cut yourself some grace and just get back on track.
I think one of the things, Brooke, that I did that it started to help me a lot is I download. I can actually send it to you if you want to just take a look at it too. I download a few apps on my phone. That is
Okay.
two particular ones that I downloaded. It's one that is called Bible Chat, and there is
Yeah.
another one that's called the motivational app. So
Mm-hmm.
basically what they are is just it's you can either read or you can listen, and those are just stories. One is the stories of the Bible, and there is another one that is stories of athletes and
Yeah.
CEOs and people who are entrepreneurs and people who are really pushing their performance levels. And it helps me because when I have these moments that my mind is just spinning and I'm kind of
Mhm.
jeopardizing myself. And it's interesting, Brooke, that the days that I actually had the binge that I did, I wasn't necessarily hungry.
It's usually how it goes, isn't it? Yeah.
I was just in my head
Mhm.
and I was just going through things, like so for example, there was one particular binge that I was able to pull myself back, and I was just and those are the moments that I really live for during the prep because that's when I know I'm getting better. So when we were going towards New York, I could tell New York Pro.
Mhm.
I don't know if you watched the show, but when I was getting ready for the show, I never saw my body that way. My body was
Yeah.
responding so amazingly, you know. I was in a very good mind state. I was really liking the way that my body looked, and in my mind, I thought to myself, regardless of how I do on the show, I think this is gonna be my best package. So Dom was confident too, and when I saw that Natalia was doing the show,
Mhm.
I was like, okay, so there are a lot of people that I should be worried about. It's not just Natalia. You know, there are a handful of great competitors here, including the girl who got third. I think she
Yeah.
got third last year. Sharonica, or the year before Sharonica. She's doing the
Yes.
show.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of things that I need to kind of worried about. I mean, not worried. You know what I mean? It's not that we
No, for
worried. We just
sure.
think that way. And to be honest with you, I didn't even know anybody who was going to compete until a week before because
Yeah.
I don't, I don't go on Instagram looking for who is doing. So
Yeah.
I just saw the list. We ended up seeing the list, and then so
Mhm.
I saw a lot of amazing names, and I was like, okay, and that bought me. And usually, I don't feel too emotional about it. On peak
Mhm.
week, I get very, very focused, but for some reason, something triggered me,
Yeah.
because I was in the mindset of like, this is my best, but what that, and in my mind, I was thinking, okay, this is what I think I needed to protect myself from myself because I don't want to get to a
Mhm.
point where I respect
Yes.
myself anymore,
Mhm.
so I'm in a situation where I'm going to show my best, but I'm going against a lot of great competitors. If I get third or fourth in that competition, I don't know how much more I can do right now. I know I can always get better, but like,
For
where
sure.
do I go from here? So
Mhm.
I was going through this like thoughts, like in ideas. So I went downstairs, and I don't know why, Brooke. The first thing that I thought as you were battling like one of the biggest stage was to
Yeah.
binge. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, you should be thinking the opposite. You should be ready for war right now.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Why are you jeopardizing yourself?
Mhm.
So I'm having these conversations with myself, and then I was able to get back to bed, because for the last few days before peak week, sometimes I sleep in another room, which I hate doing that because I love, of course, my relationship with Dom is precious to me, but he respects that because I
Yes.
go to bed very early and I wake up very early. So sometimes we sleep in different rooms. So
Mhm.
I was able to go back to my room, close, get on my knees, do my prayers, and wake up the next morning, and that feeling was done.
For
You know,
sure. And I commend that too because those are major victories, as small as that internal conflict may seem, it's actually a major battle that you are fighting constantly. So whenever you win those small battles, they add up. And here's the thing, it makes you feel so good whenever you cross that stage, regardless of the placement that you have, because you know what you've been through and you know the small battles that you have won. So that's a major, major victory in itself. And I applaud you for that, because a lot of times people, like I'm saying, they'll do things behind closed doors and they'll make it seem as if they're doing everything at 110% when maybe that's not necessarily the case. And then they kind of are just in this false reality and portraying that things are much different than what they actually are. And there's nothing wrong with being vulnerable and being human. And I think in order for all of us to be more successful in the end, it's nice whenever you can relate with one another and say, you know what? I'm experiencing these thoughts, these emotions, and these problems or issues whenever I'm prepping, but I'm going to keep them internal into myself because nobody else is, right? Everybody else is like training hardcore. They're doing all this cardio. They're making it seem like it's not even hard, embrace the suffer and blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, I can applaud it for sure, but I don't think that is the case. I think everybody makes it
I
seem like
know.
they're so hardcore, but I think they're probably having the same internal conflicts that we all are, and that's okay. So I think we should just embrace it and probably speak more of it. That way, I think it normalize it a little bit, right?
And what I want to invite everybody who is listening, I want people to not feel like, okay, so I can justify myself waking up in the middle of the night and
Right.
eating because those top athletes are doing. And now I want to invite you guys to think, well, they're doing it. I'm not gonna do it because I'm gonna win.
There you go. Right.
Because
Yes.
next time I'm gonna get them because they're gonna be there, stuffing their faces. I'm not.
Right.
But I think the message here is to really understand that this is like a marathon because
Hmm.
some of the mistakes in some of these battles that I had were a little bit more intense at the beginning. And I think it's
Hmm.
a combination of several different things, not just necessarily the diet that I was on or the strict training, but it was a combination of not being in the right environment where people were questioning me, what I was doing. My mom didn't really like bodybuilding at the time. My ex-boyfriend was extremely jealous of the
Hmm.
fact that I got became a professional bodybuilder before him. So now things are so different because not only I learned from a lot of the mistakes that I made, I have my faith is much stronger now. You know, I feel like I have this connection with God that I found through prep that made me so much stronger. My husband is a huge supporter. My community here in Las Vegas is they're all supporters. You know, I even talked to Tiana yesterday on a podcast and I said that there was a moment that I was like laughing out loud when I was in the gym and I was stretching in a corner at Dragons and this big ass guy came towards my way and he's huge. He's like I could even feel like his presence coming like boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, is he coming towards me? Because I'm here in the corner. Like, where is he going? So he's coming and he gives me his hand and he goes, I'm a huge fan. And I'm like, what? And then we start talking and he's a strong man. He competes at the
Hmm.
Arnold and he follows, women's bodybuilding. He has a huge respect for what we do. And then that's when I was like, this is so cool because I came from years where a lot of people around me were challenging me and telling me that shouldn't be doing this. Now
Hmm.
I'm around people who are who understand and males in the industry that acknowledge, that know the journey, that respect. So the mindset is so much better. So
Hmm.
what I'm trying to say is that the marathon that led me to where I am right now, that with the binging and then doing and then giving up on a few things and or not doing my 100% in the gym, those are really kind of really away like further behind me
Hmm.
because of the community, because of the people that trust me and believe in me and the faith that I have now that I found, in the church that I go here to. So those things, if anybody wonders how we get better from here, I think those are very valuable things. Is to surround yourself with people that support you, have some type of faith. I mean, I would love for people to be, in get to know Jesus first, but if whatever kind of like path they are in their spiritual journey, so be it, but to find something that they can rely on because it's so important. And just really again and hear these things from us from the top too, and know that it's going to get better as long as you just keep on improving yourself on those aspects.
Oh, for sure. Your community and the support that you have is so huge. At the end of the day, whenever you're presenting a physique on stage, it's a physique that you've built, but so many other people have contributed to that. And absolutely, I think whenever you're surrounding yourself with stimulus that is doing nothing but maybe stressing you out, or people are constantly questioning you, or why are you eating that, or maybe trying to enable a bad behavior in terms of, oh, one little bite won't hurt, or whatever the case may be, you're surrounding yourself with people. Maybe they don't necessarily understand the sport, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, they should still respect you and respect your goals and allow you to do things that you want to do, right? But here's what I will say, I'll go on the back end of this and I'll play kind of devil's advocate, is I believe a lot of competitors can be assholes too. And whenever they're at events or whatever, they are just kind of jerks when it comes to, I have this meal that I'm eating and they are going to make every other person around them suffer in terms of their attitude, their demeanor, right? And I don't necessarily agree with that. Being cranky and being upset because of a choice that you chose to do in order to compete is not a reason for you to just be rude to anybody and everybody around you because they're choosing to eat cake or go out and do things or whatever the case may be. Those goals that they have and those choices that they make are completely fine as well. Now, I'm not saying that they should throw cake in your face or, whatever the situation may be either. I'm not saying that. But I think there comes a balance, Yes, surround yourself with people that encourage you to do well. They're going to support you in this journey. They're only going to make you better whenever you do choose to step on that stage. But also make yourself a pleasant person to be around as well. Because if you're prepping for a show and you're prepping for 16, 20 weeks, whatever the case may be, and you're a miserable person throughout that 16 or 20-week journey, and let's just say you go on and win, I don't really respect a champion that's just been a jerk. I respect a champion that can be out and they can go to a birthday party and they can be around that, maybe not all the time, obviously, but they can still have a smile on their face. They can still be present in certain situations with friends and family and loved ones and not allow their lack of eating or their choices in terms of competing and bodybuilding to make them miss out on those opportunities with friends and family, right? There is a balance. And I'm not saying that you won't have to pick and choose from time to time, but I think that is very important because at the end of the day, you do need to make sure that you are a pleasant human being. And I can say for myself that there's tons of competitors that I'm like, I don't want to be around that individual because they're unpleasant,
Oh,
and
I got to meet a few, at Olympia that I was like,
yes.
I don't feel vibe with this person. Mm-mm.
Yeah, so it's definitely important, yes, to surround yourself with a good, strong community, but obviously make sure that you are pleasant for other people to be around as well. We should encourage each other and lift one another up, regardless of what your goals are, whether it's in bodybuilding or just life in general. We should be supportive of one another.
100%. And I think that's so important too, because again, this is a choice. This
Hmm.
you're not, you have the certainty that your next meal is coming.
Yeah.
Like for example, coming from a place where I come from, Brazil being a third world country with
Exactly.
40% of the people making $250 a month.
Hmm.
40% of Brazil makes $250 a month. That's what they live on.
Yeah.
So when you're seeing that, when I go back home and I see that and I see the poverty, which is a beautiful country, but you see a
Yeah.
lot of poverty, then I feel even embarrassed to say, "Oh, I'm here, I'm hungry." Like
Exactly.
I probably don't know what really hunger is. I'm just, like it's
Absolutely.
embarrassing to say that
Hmm.
and feel cranky about, what I'm doing in terms of bodybuilding. So I don't really respect
Yes.
people in that, I love the game face and I love the seriousness and taking it things serious because I think that's how if you get into this, you should be able to do things correctly with a few hiccups
Hmm.
here and there. But
Yeah.
uh, that doesn't mean that you're gonna be an asshole. And if you are, then
100%.
like I'm not vibing with you because I don't have time for people
Exactly.
who are not grateful or that don't support one another here. And then I think I'm gonna finish with this too. I like that. I like that if people compete to prove people right
Hmm.
is much better than competing to prove people wrong. So I
For sure.
think that if you were thinking about just like what you said, you build your body, but there are so many people involved in what you built. Your
Mhm.
coach, your posing coach, your partner, your husband, boyfriend, whatever the case, or girlfriends, family, so many different supports of fans, people supporting your journey that trust and believe in your potential. So when you are prepping, you're thinking about them because they go and they say, you can make top five. When I
Yeah.
hear my husband saying that, like
Yeah.
it fires me up.
For sure.
But I think a lot of people go, "Oh, this podcast said that I will never make top 5," or "This person said that my legs are too small," or "I'm gonna prove them wrong." If you're already
Exactly.
going prep thinking that way, like you're already in this like pool of negativity that's
Mhm.
just gonna drive further down into like being the asshole that you were talking about, or
Exactly.
even if you're not really the champion that people really look up to.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that goes back to what you were saying, to make sure that you just surround yourself with this strong community of individuals that are going to they're gonna grow you, they're gonna help develop you, they're not gonna hinder you or bring you down, and I think that that falls in line with, like, social media and, like, you're referring to podcasts, so I would say strong or surround yourself in a strong community in that regard too, don't go down this deep, dark bunny hole, where people do on social media and they see some terrible comment that a keyboard warrior has said about them and their legs or their size or their lack of size or whatever the case may be. I think we can all go down that rabbit hole and somebody has said something that's probably not been very pleasant about you or me, and yeah, does it suck when people say those things? Absolutely. Of course it does. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. And try not to even look at that stuff. I mean, when it comes to social media, find a different outlet, find something that is going to uplift you. And I'm not saying that social media can't be a great thing and it can be a resource for motivational situations and kind of help encourage you, but it can also be detrimental. So have that balance there as well. And make sure you're surrounding yourself with people that are going to uplift you and make sure that you are just a better individual, not even from a bodybuilding standpoint, just a better human. And that comes to social media. Social media, I'll find myself scrolling and who knows what it is that I've seen, but if it's something negative, it'll put me in a negative mood. So something that I do when it comes to things like that is I hit the unfollow button or see less of this.
Yeah,
Negativity, unfortunately, is gonna be in our world forever. Just you can't have positive energy without negative energy. They kinda go hand in hand. I think it's just a matter of making sure that you surround yourself with a positive and know how to get yourself out of negative situations. And once you are able to recognize, "Hey, this is a negative situation. It does not serve me well," get out of it. Find that positive light
absolutely.
again.
It's mental hygiene, just the same as
Mhm.
your sleep hygiene. You have a
For
ritual
sure.
to go to bed, so you make sure that you get into your REM sleep. You have a ritual where you are detoxing from, things in your mind. So less of that podcast that just
Mhm.
gossip, less of that podcast or page that is constantly, trying to make
Yes.
rivalries of people. Like I just that like especially when I am on prep, it's like I don't even look. I do the same. I unfollow, I muted people. I
Yeah.
I don't look.
Like, I can't see this. It's gonna bring me
No.
down, and I don't need that.
Yeah. But Brooke, thank you so much for spending time with me.
Yes. No,
That was
thank
amazing.
you. As always, I
I
love to
am
see
I
you and chat.
thank you. I want one more question. Any plans for
Yeah.
the season?
Yes. So, I definitely have some plans this season, and I just kinda looking back at mistakes that I kinda made last year, I think, like I was telling you, I probably peaked a little bit too early, and I think it just probably put me in a little bit more of, like, a stressed out situation going into the Olympia, so I think I definitely wanna do something a little bit earlier this year. I am guest posing a couple times, so we haven't necessarily
Yes.
pinpointed a show that I'm gonna do, but yes, I'm obviously going to definitely compete this year, hopefully earlier in the season. And, the ultimate goal obviously is always going to be the Olympia, but something that I really want to encompass this year is just I want to show it's funny that we're actually talking about women within our industry kind of not having necessarily a presence anymore. We're all kind of keeping to ourselves and maybe not being as vocal on certain things or whatever the case may be. But my goal this year really is just to kind of put myself out there a little bit more than what I have in the past. And ultimately, as silly as cliche as this might sound, I really am not necessarily concerned on my placement. I want to show as many people as I possibly can that you can be a female and you can have muscle on your frame and you can be beautiful and feminine and sexy and you can have a marketable physique. So as odd as that sounds, I think my goal going into this season is just a little bit different than what it has been in the years past. I've always had this goal on I need to punch that Olympia golden ticket. And yes, obviously I want to still make it to that stage, but I just want to show as many people as I can that, you know, muscle on a woman can be beautiful. And that's may sound silly, but that's my goal this year. And I plan to do it.
It's not silly because you're representing that little girl that picked up the
Uh,
weights when you were 12 years old and kind of like making all of the story become this grand finale of showing people all the years that you dedicated to fitness. You know, that's what Dom always tells me. He's like, this is not about you winning a show. This is about
mhm.
you as a 15-year-old female, you know, doing some bicep curls and looking yourself in the mirror and imagining these things as becoming this female empowerment of strength and beauty and sensuality too, which you can implement that into
Yeah.
your posing. And so it's just that whole that grand finale. It's you on stage, kind of like this is 20 years of history.
Yes, you know, and it's funny you say that because that's who I still see when I look in the mirror. I see that little 12-year-old reading Flex magazine and hanging up posters of Jose Raymond's arm blaster in my, you know, bedroom. So it's funny to think about that. That's who I still see whenever I look in the mirror. So I definitely want to just show the world or show as many people as I can that, you know, like I said, you can be a female, you can have muscle on your frame, and you can be beautiful. And if I can show young girls that as well, and if there's a right way, well, I'll say a right way. There is a way and a process that you can do in order to achieve that look. I'm gonna do it. So that's my goal this year, and to be honest, I'm looking forward to it.
Get back on your YouTube because you were doing so well.
Yes, and that's the goal. Definitely have a lot of YouTube stuff planned, so I will be there. I promise you. Speaking it into
I'll be
existence.
waiting.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Brooke, thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you
Keep
so
in touch
much.
with
I
me.
so look
Now I
forward
have
to seeing you.
yes, I now you have my phone number. So if you are faced with yourself at 2 o'clock in the morning running around your kitchen, text
Yeah,
me.
I will. I'll FaceTime you and show you what I'm doing. Doing laps in the kitchen.
All righty, Brooke.
Yes,
Have a good
thank you
Sunday.
so much. Yes, you too.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.